led some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, transforming them into global giants. He's dined with presidents, navigated billion-dollar economies, and earned a reputation as one of the sharpest financial minds of his generation. Now, he's trying to run for president of Côte d'Ivoire, a country still haunted by civil war, political unrest, and fragile democracy. But the system doesn't seem ready to let him in. His critics say he's out of touch. His supporters say he's the only hope. And the courts? Well, some say the verdict was written before he even announced his bid. Today, we're breaking down the story of Tidjane Thiam, former CEO of Credit Suisse and Prudential UK, who's returned to his motherland, the Ivory Coast, to mount a high-stakes presidential campaign against incumbent President Alassane Ouattara. We'll look at his journey, the political machine and system he's up against, and ask the bigger question, as we always do here on The Breakdown. Is Tidjane Thiam the type of reformer Africa needs, or the threat its elites fear? It's going to be a good one. But before we dive in, I want to invite you to be a part of something bigger. Because here at Genius TV, we're building a home for global Black stories that are told with truth, care, and power. If this is something that matters to you, and I hope it does, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and consider joining our membership community or buying a super thanks to support our work. Now let's get into it.
I know a lot has been said. I'll just try to add maybe a few points. The thing about the short term and the long term, I'll just use an image which is well known. It's the experiment where you take a vase, you put an apple that's exactly the diameter of the extremity of the vase, and you give it to a chimpanzee. He will put his hand grab the apple and try to pull it out, and will never succeed. And humans, you can run this experiment with humans after 1, 2, 3 years. When they get to 3 years old, the kid will take the vase, grab the apple, let the apple go, take his hand out, turn the vase around, get the apple, eat the apple. For me, that summarizes very well all the tensions between short-term and long-term, because often to get what you want, you have first to let it go. If you don't want to let go of the apple, you'll never eat it, which is what the chimpanzee does. The little kid understands that there is a trade-off there. Okay, I have to forego some immediate gratification for future gratification, and I will eat the apple. And a lot of situations like that happen in business where I'm speaking, the head of my investment bank is there. We've just been through a 5-month strategic planning exercise together. And I often say, unfortunately, there are very few things that are good both in the short and the long term. And that's called a free lunch, and if you find one, you should take it. But it's very rare. Most long-term good things are challenging in the short term. And really a lot of the job we have to do as CEOs is to manage this tension well. I agree with Andrew that to be viable, a long-term strategy has also to be viable in the short term. I am not one of those who recriminate against the short-term pressures, because in the end, your job is complex because you have to manage both.
Now, as a professional in the diaspora, I've been following the career of Tidjane Thiam for years. And let me tell you, it's nothing short of extraordinary. This man is a trailblazer, rising through the ranks of global finance to become the first Black CEO of Prudential UK, and later on, Credit Suisse. Yes, that Credit Suisse. His impact? Undeniable. He paved the way for so many Black professionals in the world of finance, truly becoming a symbol of African excellence on the global stage. So naturally, when I heard that he was running for president of Côte d'Ivoire, my first reaction was, how lucky is Côte d'Ivoire to have someone of his caliber, this financial powerhouse, coming back, returning home to lead? Now, let me be clear. I haven't studied his policies yet, so no, this is not an endorsement. But as the book of Proverbs say, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. And when it comes to the business world, Tidjane Thiam has a name that carries weight. So let me introduce you to him. Born in Abidjan, the economic capital of Côte d'Ivoire, Thiam comes from a legacy of influence. His uncle was once a prime minister. His father was a respected politician. But his path didn't start in politics. It started with numbers. After graduating at the top of his class from École Polytechnique and ENA, two of the most elite schools in France, he launched a career that would take him deep into the heart of global finance. He later became a partner at McKinsey, then the first African to lead a FTSE 100 company when he took the helm at Prudential UK. And the big one, CEO of Credit Suisse, one of the most powerful financial services firm in the world. This wasn't just a successful African. This was an African at the pinnacle of global capitalism. It mattered. But then came the pivot. After decades at the top of the financial world, in 2023, Thiam shocked many by announcing that he was entering Ivorian politics. No, not as an advisor and not as a donor, but as a presidential candidate, ready to challenge one of Africa's most entrenched political systems. And just like that, the global banker became a political disruptor. But the real question now isn't about his resume. It's about something deeper. Is Côte d'Ivoire and Africa, really, ready for someone like him to lead? And will they even give him the chance? Now, here's where the story takes a turn. Because Thiam's return to Côte d'Ivoire wasn't exactly met with open arms. Almost immediately, he ran into a wall of resistance from the political establishment, from the courts, and from the system itself.
Last week, Mr. Thiam's coalition of political parties tried to make their way into a court case that he and they said was trying to block his bid for the presidency.
So here's what happened, according to Thiam. A lawsuit was filed by someone from within his own coalition. Someone he says was prompted by the authorities, claiming he doesn't meet the legal criteria to run for president. Now, let's be clear. Thiam was a French citizen, but he officially dropped his French citizenship before seeking the election. So, no, he is no longer a French national, right? But that's what they're holding up against him. And Thiam, he's calling this a setup.
Presidency.
Would you be surprised if you were stopped in your tracks and your candidacy would be thrown out?
No, that's the general expectation, that my candidacy will be thrown out. It's the appearance of legality, but it has no grounds. Right? This is one of 390 people in my party who, prompted by the authorities, has created this lawsuit and taking us to court, where we know the outcome. It's already predetermined, but it's all going to look like a due process. Legality and justice are not always the same. During slavery was perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. Was it just? No.
Let's be real. This isn't new. This is a playbook we've seen across the continent. Weaponize the courts, question the candidate's eligibility, block the threats before the people even get a chance to choose. And let's not forget, this is Côte d'Ivoire, a country that still bears the scars of a civil war sparked by a disputed election in 2010. Thiam himself says the last truly peaceful election was way back in 1990. That's over 30 years of political tension, mistrust, and violence. And the signs are already flashing red. Security forces surrounded his house. His party headquarters were stormed. And a peaceful rally was shut down by the police.
Currently in Paris, he says he and his supporters have faced intimidation back home, with security forces surrounding his house. He described to me how a recent party rally was harassed.
They went and they occupied the party headquarters. I went there personally. I stood between the police forces and our militants, and I told them, look, in life, you can't control events, but you can always control how you react to them. We're going to show them that we're a party of peace. There won't be a stone thrown. There won't be anything. You're going to be calm.
He says he will do everything to avoid going back to the all too familiar mistakes that led to the civil war in 2011.
literally stood between police and his supporters and told them to stand down. And that tells you something. Whether you support him or not, the man understands what's at stake. Because in a country where elections have often led to bloodshed, one misstep, one angry crowd, one spark can be enough to set it all off again.
There is no history of good elections in Côte d'Ivoire, none whatsoever. The last election without violence was in 1990. That's 35 years ago. We need to, I say, give up the Kalashnikov and the machete and the wooden stick.
But how do you talk to a system that isn't listening? And here's the bigger question. If the democratic process is this fragile in one of West Africa's most important economies, what does that mean for the rest of the continent?
It's very worrying. And the reason I'm fighting with such energy, the reason I'm sitting across from you today is that I think we can shape a different future for Africa. Some countries have been able to have a peaceful transition, change of president. Senegal has done it now several times. Ghana has just done it. But Côte d'Ivoire is struggling. And Côte d'Ivoire is vital for stability. This is why I'm advocating that reason triumphs and that this time we don't resort to violence.
So here's the real tension in this story. Tidjane Thiam is brilliant. He's accomplished, respected across boardrooms from London to New York to Davos. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because while Thiam represents the best of what Africa can produce, he also represents something a lot of people in the region still don't fully trust. The elite, the global, Western-educated, suit and tie technocrat. The kind of leader who can quote macroeconomic theory but hasn't waited in line at a broken clinic, or hustled through a power outrage, or argued with a customs officer who just wants a bribe. Well, maybe he has. It's a story we've seen before across the continent, right? You have a brilliant son or daughter of Africa. They go abroad, build a great, mighty career, gain international acclaim, then returns home, comes back with a plan to fix the system. But here's the thing. Does global success automatically translate to local legitimacy? Can someone who spent decades in Switzerland and London really understand the needs of the average Ivorian? Or are they too far removed from the realities on the ground? So that's the situation, right? And some critics say Thiam is trying to import leadership rather than build it from the ground up. That his campaign feels more like a corporate turnaround plan than a grassroots movement. But others say that's exactly why he's qualified. They argue, if a man can steer billion-dollar institutions through global crises, maybe, just maybe, he's the kind of leader who can bring fiscal discipline, credibility, and peace to a country like Côte d'Ivoire. Because here's the bigger picture. This isn't just about Thiam. This is about a new class of African leaders emerging from the diaspora. Leaders who speak the language of both the continent and the world. And they're asking a bold question. Why not us? Why shouldn't Africa be led by people with the skills, vision, and global networks to match the continent's potential? But at the same time, why should the people trust them? That's the elite's drama. And it's the line that Tidjane Thiam now has to walk, with the whole country watching. Now let's take a closer look at the man Tidjane Thiam is trying to unseat, President Alassane Ouattara. Because Thiam isn't just running for office, right? He's truly running against a deeply entrenched system led by a man who's been at the top of Ivorian politics for over a decade. Ouattara, a former IMF official and central banker himself, came into office in 2010 after a brutal election crisis that left thousands dead. Now, he was supposed to be the face of a new era, pro-business, technocratic, focused on rebuilding. And To be fair, under his leadership, Côte d'Ivoire has experienced strong economic growth, major infrastructure investment, and renewed international credibility. Highways, airports, a booming capital city in Abidjan. But that's not the full story.
But first, Alassane Ouattara has taken the oath of office for a third consecutive term, and a controversial one at that. His election win was largely disputed by the opposition, who had long called for the president to be replaced by a transitional government. The win sparked violence on the streets of Ivory Coast, killing dozens. The two sides have tried to dialogue, but talks were suspended last month, and now Ouattara is making a fresh call for discussions to resume. Yinka Oyetare has more.
Despite an election campaign riddled with controversy and cries of foul play, Alassane Ouattara was sworn in as president of Ivory Coast for a third term.
Je jure solennellement et sur l'honneur de respecter et de défendre fidèlement la Constitution.
In 2020, Ouattara ran for a controversial third term, despite the fact that the Ivorian constitution had a two-term limit. His justification? That a 2016 constitutional rewrite resets the clock. Critics, they saw it differently. A legal loophole used to cling to power. Protests erupted, dozens were killed, and yet he stayed. And now there are loud whispers that he may try to run for a fourth term. He's indicated that. So when Thiam steps into the ring, he's not just entering a democratic race, he's challenging a political dynasty, one that's shown it's willing to stretch the rules, sideline opposition, and maintain control, no matter the cost. So ask yourself, can a first-time candidate, no matter how accomplished, truly take on a machine that's been in power for 14 years and counting? So let's zoom out, because this story isn't just about one man running for office in one country. It's about something bigger, something playing out across the continent. A battle between the old guard and the new class, between entrenched power and reform-minded outsiders, between those who believe in politics as usual and those trying to imagine something different, wildly different. Côte d'Ivoire is a critical country in West Africa. It's one of the region's largest economies, a hub for trade, investment, and culture. But it's also a country with fragile democratic record and deep political scars. If someone like Tidjane Thiam, a man with global experience, a clean reputation, and no history of violence, can't even get a fair shot at running, what does that say about the state of democracy in Africa? Because in far too many places, the pattern is the same. Rules rewritten, candidates disqualified, courts weaponized, and the will of the people ignored again and again. Thiam doesn't mince words when he talks about democracy on the continent. And he's not just fighting for a seat at the table, he's calling out the double standards that often shape global expectations of Africa, and especially the silent role of Western powers.
You talked about key stakeholders. What about Western powers?
What I really think is that there's a background of racism there, and a lot of people feel that democracy is just too good for Africans, and they don't really need it, they don't really deserve it. And the kind of regimes we have, well, TIA, this is Africa, okay? So there's a tolerance, and this is something I really resent. I always fight so that Africans are judged exactly by held to the same criteria than the rest of the world.
And the danger? No, it's not just bad governance, right? It's disillusionment. People stop believing that change is even possible. And when people lose faith in democracy, what comes next? Violence, apathy, or worse, strong men with shiny promises and dark intentions. That's what makes this moment in Côte d'Ivoire so important. Because if Thiam is silenced, it's not just about him. It's about the signal it sends to every other young African with a vision, a skill set, and a dream to lead. It tells them, oh, no, don't even bother, because this system wasn't built for you. But if the country can pull off a peaceful, transparent, truly open election, no matter who wins, it could set a precedent, not just for Côte d'Ivoire, but for the whole continent. If you really want to understand what Tidjane Thiam is trying to do, you have to listen to him speak, not just about politics, but about principles. Thiam talks about his hopes for a peaceful, united, and prosperous Côte d'Ivoire, a nation where disagreements don't turn into violence, and where leadership is grounded in integrity and vision, not fear and intimidation. His message is calm. It is measured, but determined. He's not running as a revolutionary. He's running as a reformer with a technocrat's mind and a statesman's tone. And interestingly, when asked about dealing with difficult global powers like Donald Trump, whose administration cut off major aid programs to Africa, Thiam doesn't flinch.
I've actually had the honor of having dinner with Mr. Trump in Davos, and I know people around him. But the issue is the Ivorians. It's for the Ivorians to fight for their freedoms and conquer them. The US did that in 1776, France did that in 1789, the British did that with Magna Carta. You see, in every country that enjoys a genuine democracy, it's not another country that came and handed it over to them.
Now, that's not just a foreign policy statement. That's a leadership philosophy. He's signaling that his presidency, if it happens, won't be built on dependency, not on aid, not on handouts, not on foreign saviors. It'll be built on self-reliance, responsibility, and frankly, a belief that Africa must define its own path. Whether that message resonates with the masses back home, that's still unclear. But what's certain is this: Tidjane Thiam is not trying to be a populist. He's trying to be a serious, credible alternative to the politics of personality, of violence, and survival that have long dominated Ivorian leadership. So, where do we go from here, Breakdown family? Tidjane Thiam, he may not win. He may not even be allowed to run, which would be tragic. But his story forces us to confront something deeper. Who gets to lead Africa? And on what terms? Because the real battle isn't just between Thiam and Ouattara. It's between a vision of Africa driven by competence, accountability, and bold ideas, and a system that too often protects power for power's sake. We talk a lot about change. I read all your comments, and it's all about the need for change. You all see it. But change doesn't happen just because someone new shows up. Change happens when systems make space for new voices to rise without fear, without violence, and without manipulation. And that's the test right now, not just for Côte d'Ivoire, but for the entire continent, because there is a new generation of brilliant minds on the other side of the world, in the diaspora, who want to come home, bring their skills home, bring their leadership, their strengths, their investment, capital. Are we building an environment where they can bring their skills home to make real change? Are we building democracies that can withstand pressure? Or just playing dress up for the international community while silencing anyone who dares to think differently? Because, let's be real, what Africa needs right now, leaders with a different mindset. And if a man like Tidjane Thiam, a global leader, a technocrat, a voice for peace, can be shut down before the people even cast a vote, then maybe the problem isn't the candidate. Maybe the problem is the system itself. And so my question for you, my people, is this, simply: what do we do when the system refuses to make space for change? Because we talk about it, we want change. But what do we do when there's no room for it? Let me know in the comments. You know I read them all, and I can't wait to hear from you. That's it for today's breakdown. If this episode moved you, if it sparked a thought or lit a fire, like it, and share it widely with your network, in your group chats, on your socials. Because the more we have these critical conversations, the more we grow and the more we shift the culture. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.